So today's episode of Bab's Honda Repair, I've got a 2007 Honda Accord in here, and we're going to be doing a wheel bearing replacement on the driver's side front. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through this. It should be the same for I think 03 to 07, 08 Accords. V6 4-cylinder, all should be pretty much the same. Yeah, let's get started with it. Alright, so to begin with, I've got it up on my lift. Some of you might not have a lift, I understand. I haven't always had one myself. This one is just a bin pack mid-rise. It's, I think, 6,000 pound lift. It does pretty good for what I do here. So anyway, I've got it up on the lift, and this is the one that I'm going to be replacing. And his customer actually thought this one needed an axle, but you can see here, you can hear that wheel bearing. And this is side or top to bottom movement here. So what I'm going to do is take my 19mm socket and I'm going to pop off these 5 lug nuts, and we'll get this wheel off here real quick. Alright, so now I've got the wheel off. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take 12mm and we're going to pop the 2 bolts off here that hold on the brake caliper to the brake caliper bracket. Alright, to do this you can just use a ratchet wrench or socket or a regular wrench, whatever you got handy. I find these ratchet wrenches pretty handy. They do pretty good. I also have air tools as well, but this is just something small here, so we can pop these off with a wrench. Alright, so now I've got those 2 bolts out, so I'm going to pop these 2 10mm here off, and then I'll be able to take my brake caliper and just lay it up here and get it out of the way for a few minutes. Alright, so now I've got those out, and I got the 2 on here off, so all we gotta do is grab this caliper, just slide it off, and just set it over there out of the way. If you don't have something like that to set it, you can zip tie it up, do something. Just don't let it hang on this rubber line, because it's not really good for the rubber line. Use a zip tie, tie it up to, you know, a bolt or bracket or whatever you need to do if you don't have somewhere to lay it. So now we're going to take the brake caliper bracket off, and we're going to take off the upper ball joint. You got to take off the ABS wire here. We got to take off the outer tie rod end and lower ball joint and the axle. So we'll start with doing the outer tie rod first, and then we'll knock out this ABS wire, and so I'll walk you through that. So to start off with this outer tie rod end, we're going to need some kind of pliers to get this cotter pin out, and then this one is a 17mm. I'll be able to pull that one down. Now the way I do it is I just loosen the nut, not quite all the way off, and then I just take I got a little 2-pound hammer, and I'll just hit right here on this, and it'll pop it out. And the reason I say don't take the nut off all the way is because if you miss and you hit these threads, you'll mess the threads up. But if you miss and hit it with a nut on there, you'll just hit the nut and don't really hurt the threads. So I recommend not taking the nut all the way off. So I'm going to grab some tools real quick and get this kind of off. Alright, so I got that cotter pin out, and I got the nut loose. You can see I've got a pretty good gap in here. It's not all the way off, but it's still on there some. So if I was to slip and hit off of the actual ball joint here, or off the knuckle here, and slip and hit here, it's not going to mess up my threads. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hammer, and I'm going to hit right here, and pop this right up. Alright, I'll try to capture this. I don't know how well this is going to go since I'm holding it with one hand and hitting with this hammer with the other one. It's just a little 2-pound sledgehammer. Oh, I saw it move in. So see, it's loose. So now we can take the nut the rest of the way off, and bang, there it is. All right. So now I'm going to take this ABS wire off. It's just a couple 10 millimeter nut or bolt here, and it's just the one here, and then it should be the one right back here. So can't really see it too well, but it's also a 10 millimeter. Yeah, right there, the little guy. So it's 10 millimeter there, 10 millimeter there, and then you just take this and kind of twist it and wiggle it around, and it'll come out, and that's just your ABS sensor. And then we'll take this wire and we'll just kind of lay it out over here out of the way. Alright, so I just took this ABS sensor out, and this one actually looks like it's toasted. The little bracket was also broke off of it, and you can kind of see that's an old brake. But typically it's going to come out and look like this as a complete unit. It just has the one little bolt in it here. Like I said, this one was broke. So this is what we're working with here today. Alright, so now I'm going to get my 17 millimeter, and I'm going to take off this bolt here, and there's another bolt here, and that's going to take off this caliper bracket, and they'll let me remove this brake rotor. Let me get that real quick. Alright, as you can see, this is that caliper bracket, and these are the two bolts that hold it on. They're pretty snug. If you don't have air tools, you'll probably have to use a breaker bar or something like that. Typically they're pretty snug. So, alright, so now that I got that off, I can take this rotor off. Now typically they're going to have a panhead Phillips head screw here and here, and they're both M6 thread. They're not absolutely necessary, because once you put the wheel on there, it's going to hold the rotor in. That's more of just an assembly assistant. So this one, somebody hasn't put those back in whenever it was previously removed. If you can't get them out, they're Phillips head. A lot of times they like to strip. So I've had to take a drill bit in maybe like a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch drill bit, and just kind of drill in the center of it until it pops the head of it off, and then you can remove the rotor. If you live up north or somewhere where it's salty and it has more rust, you can use a M8 bolt here and here, and it'll help you pull this rotor off. Here in the south, I mean, this is about the most rust you're going to see, and this is just really surface rust from where it's been sitting for a while. And like I said, this one doesn't have the those little set screws in it, so I mean it's pretty much gonna slide right off. It shouldn't be nothing to this one. Hold on, let me put it down the phone so I can use both hands, but it'll come right off. Okay, yeah, so I got the rotor off, and there's your hub assembly. Let's see, we'll set this over here with all this other mess. Alright, so if you had the drills out, it's going to have the little piece of the bolt left in here, and that's the M6 thread. You can typically, once you get the head off here in the south, I don't know how it is in the north with all the rust, but here in the south, once you drill the head off, this little portion becomes loose, and you can just literally back it out with your fingers, or you can leave it in, whatever your choice. But now we've got it down to here, so we're going to take this axle nut off, and this one's actually a 32 millimeter. Some of the other cores, like the V6 models, are 36 millimeter. This is a 4-cylinder version, and this is a 32 millimeter. So I'm going to get my my impact socket, and I'm going to take this axle nut off real quick. Alright, so axle nut coming right off. This axle is already loose, kind of. Sometimes they'll be kind of stuck in the hub here, so you can kind of leave the nut on there and bump it with your hammer or something that you could push right in the center of this. I don't really recommend hitting this with a hammer too much, because it'll mushroom it out and then you can't get your nut back on it, and you'll find yourself buying another axle. This one came loose pretty easy, so we're good to go here. So now all I got to do is remove this lower ball joint, and I'm going to do it kind of the same way I did the tie rod in. I'm going to loosen the nut here after I take this cotter pin out, and then I'm going to hit it here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to hit it here with the hammer, and it'll pop it off. And I'm going to do the same with the upper one here. I'm going to take this nut off here, and then, or I'm not going to take it off, I'm going to loosen it to where it's down here, and then I'm going to hit it here on the side of the spindle, and it'll pop it off. A lot of people like to use the ball joint forks. Those work, but I found this method works pretty good without touching the boots, so I don't like destroying these boots if I can help it. So like I said, this method I found is pretty effective for me, and it's removed many ball joints over the years. Alright, so I don't know if this is the OEM nut or not up here, but that's a 14mm up here, and as you see I got it loose, not all the way off, but it's loose. And down here, this one is a 17mm, and you can see I've got it loose, but it's not all the way off. So now what I'm going to do is take my hammer, and I'm going to hit here, like I said, and I'm going to hit here, and I'm going to pop both these off, and then I'll be able to remove this whole spindle. Once I got the spindle off, we can remove our wheel bearing. Alright, so I just gave this one a couple of licks, and you can see it's separated it. So now I can remove the rest of the nut, and then that one will be ready to come off. But now I've got to get this lower one loose, so we'll work on that one now. Alright, so as you can see, this one's loose now. Also, when removing this one down here, and I'm actually hitting it from the back side, so if I'm facing toward the front of the car, I'm hitting it here, but I'm holding the wheel spindle out like this, and I'm pushing up on it. That's just going to kind of give you a little extra, so whenever it pops loose, you'll know it, because it's going to pop right up. So now I've got both of these loose, so I'm just going to take them the rest of the way off, and then we'll take this whole spindle off. Boy, you can say toast. I don't know that I've ever seen one quite that bad. It's pretty rough. Look at that. That sucker is missing balls out of it. See right here, there's a ball missing in there. There shouldn't be no gaps like that. Wow. This piece was also fell out whenever I took it down. But yeah, so now we've got the whole spindle out. And as you can see, this is kind of what it looks like. It's going to leave your axle hanging here. That's where your lower ball joint goes. This is your upper ball joint. Tie rod in, ABS sensor, and of course our brake calipers over here. So by doing this, we're not going to have to bleed the brakes or anything, because we're not opening up any of the braking system, nothing. Yeah, so now we're going to get this bad boy out of here. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a socket that'll fit right inside of this, and then we're going to hit it with this hammer, and we're going to knock this hub assembly here out. And this customer actually elected to get a new hub assembly and all, so I don't even have to worry about removing the race off of the hub assembly. Just makes it a little easier doing it that way. Alright, so here's the new hub assembly that they bought, and I actually have the wheel bearing and the freezer. Now, I would recommend leaving it in the freezer for at least 12 hours before you're ready to tackle this project. Now, I just put that in there a couple hours ago, if that, maybe an hour ago, as I don't plan to finish this job tonight, because I actually have to go to my regular job tonight here in a little bit. So I've got this off here, and I'm going to take this apart real quick and get it prepped so that tomorrow evening, after I get home, sleep, and all that jazz, this will be ready to go with the wheel bearing once it's good and frozen. And we'll cover some more on that tomorrow. But right now I'm going to pop this apart real quick, and I'll show you what we're looking at here. Alright, so back to this. Alright, so I actually have my 32mm socket still sitting here, and it fits in there pretty good. It's got a little gap around it. That's fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this up off the floor. You can choose to use some blocks or whatever to kind of prop it up. I feel pretty comfortable just being able to hold it myself. And then I'm going to hit the socket with my hammer, and it's going to knock that hub assembly back through. See if you see here. Well, I'm going to switch this camera. We can see here one good lick, and it's already kind of got it moving. So a couple more licks, that's going to be all the way out. Just kind of showing you what we're going with here. See? Came right out. Now all those balls out of that bearing just went everywhere. And I'm sure my son will love to have these. Call them BBs or something. Maybe you shoot them with a slingshot or something like that. See, that's all your balls out of your bearing. That's only half of the bearing. So now we're going. Alright, so this is the race of that bearing right here. Now, I don't have to remove this because they got a new hub assembly. Now, but if they did, I would take my grinder and I would actually make a slit in this until I could get my chisel and pop it loose. I don't have to deal with that on this one because they got a new hub assembly. So, I'll set that to the side, don't really need it. Alright, so once you get it off, I've got it clamped in my vise here. This one's kind of nasty. But you kind of see this lot ring. And here, right there is the ends of it. So I got my lot ring pliers here. Now I'm going to get them situated because they're on the opposite side of what I'm going to need to do right now. So let me pause it real quick and change them up. Alright, so I got my lot ring pliers situated the way I wanted them. And we can kind of see there's one hole and there's the other hole. Alright, so we're going to get those in there eventually. Alright, and then so once you get them in there, you're going to squeeze it and it's going to move that lot ring. Let me get this situated real quick. So upon further inspection, this wheel bearing is so bad, it's eating part of my eyelet here. Hopefully I still got enough to get it off. Alright, well, I ain't got it all the way out, but I've got it started coming out. So once you get to this point, you can kind of walk it out with a screwdriver or whatnot. But I got a piece here that's holding me up, part of that old bearing. So let me get that fixed up right there real quick, and we'll get this thing the rest of the way out. Alright, so that's the little piece that was holding me up. Piece of the old bearing. Alright, so back to our lot ring here. See, I just took my screwdriver behind it and walked it out. It came right out. So now I can get behind and I can actually push the rest of this bearing out from the back side, because that lock holding this outer race of the bearing here. And the inner race is what's still stuck on that hub. But we're going to get this outer race out and push it all the way out. So I'm going to flip it over and get it down here back on the ground and get it situated, get it ready to get this part of the bearing out and this outer race here, and I'll get back to you. Alright, so I took my hammer and started knocking on the bearing that was left in here, and it kind of got it moving, because you can kind of see this gap that is created here, right in here. It's kind of a groove where it's made a gap. So this means it's moving. But in the process of that, it knocked the rest of that bearing out. So now what I'm going to do is I have just a regular old punch. And so I'll get in here kind of in that groove. and work it around with my hammer, hitting on this punch. And that's going to knock that the rest of the way out. And I'll set up my camera and so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Alright, so I kind of got this end of the spindle kind of propped up on something here. You can use a block of wood or whatever. Now I'm just going to get back in that groove here with my chisel, or punch, whatever. Rock it back and forth until I get it out of there. Is it coming? See? That's your outer race of both bearings. So you have a bearing that's on this side pretty much, and a bearing that's on this side. And this sucker here is war slap out. So now you've got a spindle with no wheel bearing. So I would recommend cleaning this up real good and getting it prepped for your new assembly. And we'll get on the reassembly of this tomorrow, but tonight I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit and get it ready for tomorrow. And then I'll resume recording this tomorrow and cover some more of it. That's the disassembly side of it, so we'll get on the assembly side of it tomorrow, like I said. Anyway, peace. Well, you can see here that I've got it cleaned up. Appears someone has done something with the wheel bearing before, or either the wheel bearing failure messed up the little area here where the lock ring goes. So I had to take my little cutoff wheel on a grinder. You could probably do it with a Dremel or whatever, and I just cleaned it back out a little bit so that the lock ring fits down there properly. This new wheel bearing came with a new snap ring, and it does fit in there properly. I've already test fit it, make sure it works like it's supposed to. So I got it all cleaned out and everything. So tomorrow, after that new bearing has had a chance to shrink in the freezer a little bit, we'll get it all thrown back together. Alright, so I'm back the next day. Got me a little bit of sleep today. Got me a little bit of coffee just a minute ago. Woke up a little bit. Still kind of struggling. Need some more sleep. Yeah, I'm gonna get started on throwing this wheel bearing back in this Accord and do the rest of the stuff I gotta do to it so I can get it out of here, get some money in the bank. Anyway, I'm gonna get to it. Alright, so the first thing I'm gonna do is, like you said on the previous videos, I cleaned this up last night. I don't know what all this scoring and stuff in here is. I didn't do that. That wasn't from my... Or maybe someone previously did. This car's got a lot of miles on it, so there's no telling if it's been done before or not. And I'm just going to take a little sandpaper. This is actually some 800 grit. And just run in here just to make sure that new wheel bearing is going to slide in here real good. Nothing super aggressive, just making sure if it's got anything small in there that'll shine it back up. Alright, so I just run a little bit of sandpaper over that. Now I got me some brake parts cleaner. I'm just gonna hose it off real quick and make sure I got all the dust and residue out of there. This stuff dries pretty rapidly, so you'll probably be able to see it drying here in a second. Then I'm gonna get my wheel bearing out here in a minute. I'm gonna put this back on the floor to where I can bump it in. It'll probably gonna just slide in because because by putting the new wheel bearing in the freezer, it's going to shrink it ever so slightly. And so with this being, you know, exterior temperature out here, I want to say it's probably about 70 degrees today. This is going to be, you know, normal size, where the wheel bearing is slightly shrunk, so it's going to just slide right down in there. If it's a real cold day, you could take a little butane torch or something, and you can heat this up and it'll help it. But it should be pretty minimal effort to get the new wheel bearing in there. May take a couple small taps with my hammer, but I'm going to get this spindle off my vise here and put it back on the floor real quick, and get a block of wood put under it just to make sure I don't ding up my floor any worse than it already is. So yeah, I'll get that set up real quick. Alright, so here we have our wheel bearing fresh out of the freezer, and as you can see, it's pretty frothy. So on the ABS models, they say the brown seal has to go towards the ABS sensor, this magnetic ring. So now this should just pretty much slide down in this. Just get my hammer and bump it in there, but I think it's well on its way. Make sure you walk it around too, that way it goes in evenly, because if you try to do it on one side and you continue to do it on one side, it's going to get in there cockeyed and it's not going to seat right. And you can see I'm not putting a lot of force on this either. Alright, so I got it down pretty close here. Now I'm going to get the old wheel bearing, the outer race, and I'm going to use it to put right here on the outer lip of this, and it's going to help seat it all the way down in there. So I'm going to go grab that real quick. Alright, so I'm back with the old outer race from the old bearing, and so I can just put it right here. Turn my hammer sideways like this. I'll hit it like this. You can see I'm not hitting this with a ton of force, and it's seated there. I think it's enough right now to where I can get my snap ring in there. I'll probably give it another quick bump and then get my snap ring. Oh yeah, I think that's good there. So now I get my new snap ring pliers, squeeze the snap ring, make sure it's popped in the groove, which it is. Let's see here, the snap ring goes right in the groove perfectly. So now we're going to put the hub back on. To do this, I like to, well, I'll show you in a second. Alright, for putting the hub in, technically you could go ahead and mount the spindle on the car right now, and then put the hub in with it already mounted on the car. The way I do it, since I don't have a press here in my shop, is I actually take, I use the axle with my impact, and so I stick the axle like through the back side of the hub like it would be normal, and then so your hub, let's stick this back here. Alright, so your hub goes this way, but you're supposed to have a press to press it into this. Instead I don't have a press. So what I do is I take and I put the axle through here. Well, I'm first going to bump this in a little bit with my hammer. And then I'm going to take the axle and I'm going to put it through here. And Then I'm going to put the nut on it, and we'll tighten it down on my impact, and it's going to pull this hub all the way in. So I'm taking a little PB Blaster, just some kind of lubricant. I'm just going to put on this just to kind of help aid it slide in. Put some grease on it, whatever. Just something. Also, while I'm doing this, I'm going to mention, do not hit this ring. This ring right here, your wheel seats around that. And if you mushroom it out, your wheel's not going to seat properly. So don't hit this ring. Hit inside of this. That's where you need to hit. As you can see, it's going down in there. Let's see. I just had another axle. This one isn't the prettiest. It's got a little old rust on it or whatever. I put some penetrating oil on it just to ease things. So, like I said, if you want to do this on the car, you could, and then just use the axle that's actually in the car. This is just another 32mm axle I had laying around. So, what we're going to do, like I said before, take this axle, shove it through. Now, as you can see, it's not quite sticking through enough to get the nut started on it, so I'm going to hit it a couple more licks. And we keep this up until it gets to where I can get a couple rounds of thread on that nut. And once I can do that, I can use my air gun and pull it all the way down. Alright, so we can see here that I've got enough threads protruding now. I should be able to get this nut started. Alright, see, I got that nut started. Now, I'll take my impact with a 32mm socket. I'm going to get it right here. Let the impact do the work. It's spinning, that's fine. If you notice, the socket's spinning faster than this, so it's still tightening. And you can hear the change in the tone there, so that means it's tight. Alright, so as we can see here, it's pulled that axle all the way up in there. It's got the hub pulled down good and tight. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back off. Alright. I'm going to pull that axle back out. As we can see here, it's pulled it up nice and snug. It could probably stand to be tightened up just a little bit more, but I'll do that once it gets on the car. So, as you can see, this one's seated up nicely, and it's ready to install back on the car. So, let's get geared up for that. Alright, so now we're ready for reassembly. So what I'm going to do is take my spindle and I'm going to get the axle stubbed back in it, and then line up the ball joints, and then we'll start with tightening the ball joints first, the upper and lower, and then tighten the axle nut. We'll do our tie rod in, put our ABS sensor back in, put the brake system back on, and should be ready to go. So here's our brake spindle. don't think that's the OEM nut. That nut that I talked about previously, that 14mm. So, as you can see, this is the nut I took off the upper ball joint. And it's just a regular nut. Alright. So it's supposed to have like a castle nut like this for you to put the cotter pin through. And this one actually came off the tie rod end. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my nut bin and see if I can find another castle nut to put back on the upper. I try to do stuff right. I try to put it back the way it's supposed to be, not the way just somebody else had it. So I'm going to go over here and see if I can locate one of these real quick. Alright, so I successfully found another castle nut in my bolt bin. This one looks a little different than the other one, but still has the grooves where I can put the cotter pin through, and it's the same size thread, pitch, and all that good stuff. So this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to put this on the upper ball joint. Alright, and then this one went to tie rod end. And we have the one for our ball joint, lower ball joint. Alright, now I just kind of finger tighten those because, well, I'm going to use my impact to actually cinch them down. But that's got our upper one started, lower one started, and the tie rod end. And as you can see, our axle is stubbed through, so all I gotta do is get my axle nut and stick on that, and then when you tighten that down, tighten all the ball joints down. So let me grab the stuff real quick and we'll knock that out. Alright, so I picked up my axle nut. Get it started on there. Use our 32mm again. Good and tight. Alright, and then we're going to take our hammer and our punch, and we're going to stake that nut to where it don't move if it does back off. So just our chisel and a hammer. There's a little groove cut in the axle. You'll see what I'm talking about. So you just kind of put your punch right there. Boop, done. Alright. And then we're going to tighten up these ball joints. So what I do is just hold down on the upper control arm. And that'll kind of hold the ball joint down in the spindle where it don't spin. Then we can take our wrench. Typically I would like to use a socket on these, but the upper one here, my swivel socket is broke. So do what we got. Use a little impact on the other ones. Now, on these, you don't have to have them super tight. So what I do is I just snug them down, and then I go until the hole lines up. You see the hole in the castle nut here, and the hole in the thread. That's where your cotter pin's gonna go through. So that one's good. And now we're gonna do the lower ball joint, which is here. So hold on one second. All right, same deal with this one. It don't have to be super tight. Snug down. And you can kind of see the hole in the thread is right behind this, so we're gonna keep bumping it until we get it around. Yeah, I think we can get a cotter pin through that. Bump it one more time for good measure. There we go. There we go. Yeah, good line up there. All right, and then I'm gonna see if I can locate my swivel socket just to get this, because it's kind of difficult to do it with this because of the angle of the the spindle. Probably be done though. Let's see here. Alright, so I was able to tighten that upper one with my regular socket, and I got a hole lined up for the keyway on that one. So I always put brand new cotter pins in. A lot of people reuse the old ones, but I have a stockpile of the new ones, and I just choose to put brand new ones in every time. So I'm gonna grab a couple of cotter pins real quick and put new ones in the lower ball joint, upper ball joint, and the tie rod in. So we can see here I got 3 new cotter pins. I used the 2 larger ones for the tie rod end and the lower ball joint, and the smaller one goes in the upper ball joint. It's just got a little bit smaller hole in the threads on it. So slide that in there, and then we'll get a pair of pliers, and after I get all these other ones slid in there, and we'll bend them back. This one's kind of flimsy. I just kind of do them like this, one back, one kind of up. All it's going to do is keep that nut from coming off if it were to loosen. Let's see how I did that one. Some people will lay the pin flat instead of vertical, and then bend one around, you know, other around. It's personal preference. It works either way. Alright, now we're going to take our ABS wire and got to put the 10mm nut here, and then we're going to slide this back in the hole where it goes, like I showed you previously. The mounting tab on this one's broke, but I'm still going to put it back in there if I can find it, and then we'll put the nut back in this 10mm up here too. Alright, just got that ABS wire done. Now we're going to put back on the brake rotor, and then we can do the caliper bracket. On this brake rotor, like I mentioned before, it has those spots for the screws that hold the rotor onto the hub assembly. I don't have those screws, but we still have to make sure they line up with this, or at least I do. You don't have to, since you aren't using them, but I like to make sure they line up. So you can see here, in the event that we had our screws, we could stick them in right there. And all it's going to do is just secure the rotor while you're assembling the brake system, but you can do it without it. So now we're going to take our brake caliper bracket with our 2 17mm bolts, and we're going to put it back over that, like so, and then we're going to put the bolts in it. Alright, now that we got our bracket back on, we're going to put the brake pads back in it. Alright, and then while we're at this point, I'm going to re-grease these sliders because they seem pretty stiff. You see that's not very well lubricated. The other one is here, and it's not. If this thing would focus. Anyway, these slider pins for the brake caliper are pretty dry, so I'm gonna put some lube on them and then stick them back in there. Alright, so I also cleaned them off with some brake cleaner just to give them a good fresh surface. And I just got some Carquest slider grease that came with some brake pads. You don't take a ton of this stuff, so I had this left over from another job. But yeah, use white lithium grease or something like that and it would work sufficiently as well. Alright, so here I have both my pins greased. Like I said, it doesn't take a ton of that. We'll slide them back in here. Make sure the little rubber boot seats up. Slide it back and forth a couple times. It's feeling pretty good there. There we go. Alright, I'm gonna get my brake caliper. Slide it back up on there. Alright. Put my 12mm bolts back in here. Just get them started. Alright. So I just tightened down these with my 12mm wrench. And now I gotta put these two 10mm bolts back in here. And get them tightened down. So all that's back assembled now, and now all I gotta do is stick the wheel back on. Alright, so I got the wheel mounted back up, and as you can see, there's no more funny noises. It's just the rotor dragging there, but no top to bottom play, no side to side play. Good to go. So, hope this helps somebody, and yeah. Guys, that's the wrap on putting this wheel bearing in this 07 Accord. I still got some more stuff I got to do to it, so I'm gonna get off of here and get to that. Try to wrap this thing up today. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope it helps someone out. Peace.